ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
Hello, am I audible? To start, okay? So our today's session is just domestic policies and international trade, okay? So we are going to see this one, okay? So with domestic policy, what domestic policy is, the impact of domestic policy will be seen today in detail. So today, the objective of today's session is just at the end of this chapter, you are expected to distinguish what trade policy from domestic perspective will be seen. Identify different types of domestic policies, okay? We are going to see different types of domestic policies, okay? In terms of subsidy, in terms of tax, in terms of custom or whatever. We'll see one by one. Then you are going to learn, okay, the effects of simple domestic policies on small trading economies will be covered. So, as an introduction, okay, internationally, forums are just focused what domestic policies are in place, okay, is just the focus of most of the international trade issues, okay. So the reason is that in our, okay, the reason is that our international and globalization world, okay, the domestic policies affects, okay, different issues like energy, environment, labor market, as many other matters. Yes. So, yes, please. So, and many other matters will affect not only what happens at home, but also what and how much is traded and invested as outcome for a procedure and a consumer abroad and within the land can be seen. So in short, domestic policies have international, okay, repercussion or consequences, okay? So we are going to see that consequences, all right? So what trade policy is generally simply includes any policy and directly affect, okay, the trade policy includes, okay, any policy that directly affects the flow of goods and services between countries, including import tariffs, import quotas, okay, voluntary export tariff restraints, export taxes, subsidies, and so forth, okay? So in between 1980s and 1990s, okay, as trade barriers come down, especially between developing countries, more and more attention was just brought to the effects of certain domestic policy types, including their international, okay, effects. So what is this domestic policy is, okay, generally, all right? So domestic policy refers any type of tax or subsidy policy or any type of government regulation that targets the domestic behavior of firms or consumers, okay? So this domestic policy, it could be in subsidy form, it could be in tax form, or and some other kinds of government regulation. So it has an impact on trades, okay, between two countries within the world or between some other, okay, trading countries, okay? So it has an impact in one way or in another way. That is what we are going to see is the impact, okay? for small countries, domestic policies will affect, okay, domestic producers or whatever, the trade flow and welfare and whatever, but will not affect foreign, okay, prices, production level and welfare, okay. So it doesn't have any impact on foreign trades because their contribution is very small, as we have already seen last 2 days. When a country is large, may not need to worry much about the domestic practice like very small countries because it has its own impact, okay? A small change in percentage of just domestic policy has an impact on trade between two countries, okay? So it can be, okay, income tax, okay? It can be profit tax, it can be sales tax, okay? Internationally, these taxes are just popular. So this particularly like excise tax are just specific tax or particular commodities, like just some other restricted, okay, items, okay, imposed on some other restricted, like alcohol, cigarettes, or and whatever, okay. So there are also quantity restriction just that is imposed by the government, okay. Some domestic government policies take, okay, from form of just quantity restriction. An example is, okay, control on the amount of pollutants that can induce a meat or whatever. Also, most countries, there are restrictions on production and sales of many drugs, okay. Some selected drugs are just restricted. Particularly in United States or some other countries are just recreational drugs are prohibited, particularly like marijuana and cocaine, okay? And some pharmaceutical drugs are just prohibited. For instance, like psychotropic and narcotic drugs are just prohibited, okay? So in quantities, it can be restricted, even to 0%, okay? The restriction can go to that extent. Subsidy, okay, when we say just subsidy, now with regard to these trade issues, subsidy is a payment made by the government firms for numerous purposes, okay. It can be as an ad valorem subsidy, okay. Ad valorem subsidy is a percentage of the value of production, okay. Or it could be as a specific subsidy, okay. Specific subsidy, it could be $1 per month per unit of output, per unit of product, okay. And also can be classified, this subsidy is just a domestic production subsidy or an export subsidy. You can classify in different ways as per the purpose of the subsidy that can be offered by the government. So a domestic production subsidy is different from the export subsidy, okay? Particularly a production subsidy might be, or it could be sometimes a domestic policy. Provides a payment based on a production, regardless of where it is just sold, okay? So thus an export subsidy, okay, or it could be sometimes said as a trade policy, on the other hand, okay, only offers a payment, okay, to the quality or value that is actually exported. So the purpose of subsidy, let's see from two perspectives, okay? To just raise the income of producers in a particular industry, okay? So that the producer is just increased, okay? Particularly if it is just a commodity related with agricultural issues, okay? Agricultural commodities, it raises the income of, okay, the producer. It could be the farmer or the one who is just processing in an industry. So the other one is, okay, countries might also wish to subsidize certain industries if it is believed that the industries are important, okay, in stimulating growth of the economy. At that time, the government is just subsidizing, okay, for particularly for steel production, motor vehicle, okay, aerospace industry, and many other products can be subsidized. So in this section, what we are going to do is just how production subsidy can cause trade for a small, perfectly competitive open country, can cause, okay, just become an exporter. Consider a small open economy with perfectly competitive industry. Let the domestic market be represented by the supply and demand, what we are going to see in a graph now in the next slide. Suppose initially free trade is allowed, okay? Let the free trade price be exactly equal to the outer key price, okay? The domestic trade. So let's see production subsidy as a reason for trade, okay? How it causes a trade. So the new producer, okay, prices is just labeled as PP in figure, okay? So here it is, okay, on the graph, okay, it is PP, okay, that is producer's price, and consumer's price, PC, okay, which is equals with, okay, with price at free trade, all right? So then the figure, while consumer PC remains equal with free trade prices, thus price at, okay, producer's price is equal to prices with free trade plus the subsidy, okay, plus the subsidy, and price of the consumer is just equal to with price as free trade, okay. Then the subsidy is the distance that is just between PFT and PP, okay. So the subsidy just it increases as it increased, okay, the supply is just increased, all right, from PFT to PP, all right? So to these points. And also the quantity is just shifted from Q1 to Q2, all right? That is the distance between, okay, here to here, all right? So allows domestic firms, okay, in a small country to maximize their profits and a face of free competition with, okay, firms in the rest of the world, okay? The subsidy will increase domestic production at the market, okay, price P of free trade, okay? Domestic firms were willing to supply at Q1. Once the produce rises, okay, to PP, domestic supply will rise to Q2, you know? So the quantity, okay, is also increased. The quantity supplied will also be increased. So demand will remain as the same. However, since the consumer price remains fixed, the difference between domestic supply, okay, Q2 minus Q1, represents the level of export to rest of the world. Because of subsidy, the quantity produced are increased and the price is also increased. Because of this, the producers are just encouraged to just export his items, okay? Since export did not exist prior to the subsidy, all right? This is an example in which the domestic policy, okay, production subsidy can cause trade. It induces trade, okay? That's the point. That is, export can occur, okay? That is production subsidy as a reason for a trade, okay? In this way, okay, production subsidy can cause a trade. So a production subsidy under two separate scenarios, okay? In the first case, the subsidy is just implemented in a country that is not traded with the rest of the world. This case used to show how a domestic policy can cause international trade, okay? So it causes international trade. The second scenario is just, okay, the price, the welfare, okay, the welfare effects of a production subsidy implemented by the country that is initially importing the good, okay, from the rest of the world. Now it is reversed. Now the country is just starting export, okay, because of subsidy. So this is the contribution of subsidy, okay. So the other one is domestic policy versus trade policy price effects, okay. How domestic policy, okay, and trade policy price effects, how they are just effects affecting the prices. One of the most important, okay, distinction between domestic policies and trade policy is that the effect on prices, okay, the effect that what they are just putting on, okay, prices, right? So trade policies will always maintain, okay, the quality between domestic consumer and producer prices, but will drive, okay, a segment between domestic price and foreign prices, okay. So it drives, okay, between these two, okay, the domestic price as well as the foreign price can be segmented or weighted, okay. And the other point is, okay, domestic policies, at least production and consumption and subsidies, in contrast, will drive a wedge or a segment between domestic consumption and producer prices. All right. So when a trade policy is implemented, okay, such as tariff, price wedge, is driven between the domestic price and the foreign price of goods. Okay. So the domestic producers of a product will receive a higher price for a goods they sell, and domestic consumers will pay the same higher prices for the goods they produce. As this time, in this case, okay, domestic policies, okay, a wedge or a separation is just driven between domestic price as well as the goods. For example, if a domestic production subsidy is just implemented by a country, all right, it will rise the price producer receives when they sell their goods, okay. We will call this as a producer's prices, okay, but it will not affect the price paid by the domestic consumers when they just purchase a good. So note that we can also call a consumer prices, okay, at market price, since this is a price that will appear, okay, on a price tag in the market, all right. So the other is just a domestic policies, okay, as a base for trade, okay. Domestic policies can be the base for trade sometimes. In other words, it is possible to show that the imposition of, okay, domestic taxes, okay, or subsidies can induce international trade, as we have already seen. This can result even the country in international market, okay, even some small, okay, international small countries, those who are just contributing, okay, very minimal items in an international markets are just encouraged to export at this, okay, because of this domestic policy. So it would be straightforward to show that a production tax or a consumption subsidy, okay, such as, okay, a refund, would cause a country to export a good from just the rest of the world, okay. Let's see two examples. The first example is, okay, consider a small country initially in free trade, okay, which by chance has no desire to export or import particular commodities. The country then imposes a production subsidy. The subsidy encourages domestic production, but because of the country is open to international trade, the domestic consumer price remains the same, since the price paid by the consumer remains the same. So does domestic demand, or the extra products or production then is just exported to the rest of the world. Thus, a domestic production subsidy can cause a commodity to be exported. The second point is just a small country in free trade has no desired trade. In this case, the country implements a consumption tax. Okay, this is a tax. Okay, at this time, a tax. The first one is subsidy. The tax raises the price paid by the consumer in the domestic market, and this reduces domestic demand. However, because open consumption remains with the rest of the world, the domestic producer are now looking another option, okay, because of the demand within the local demand is just decline price, and therefore domestic production remains the same, okay. The excess production over demand will now exported to the rest of the world. Thus, domestic consumption tax can cause commodity to be exported. These are the two scenarios, all right. So welfare effects on trading economies, okay. welfare effects of domestic policies in multiple trading countries. That is the welfare effect, the effect that comes on welfare of the community or within the country. The domestic policy will affect the quantity imported or exported, the price faced by the consumer or producers, and the welfare of consumers, producers, the government, and the nation. Initially, a small country is just importing or exporting a community, okay? How it affects us? Let's see. 2 examples in this scenario, okay? In the first case, we consider a production subsidy implemented by a small country, which initially is just importing the commodity from the rest of the world. The production subsidy stimulates domestic production by just raising the producer's price, but has not affected the world price. The production subsidy stimulates, okay, domestic production by just raising producer prices, okay, then has no effect on the world price or domestic consumption price. Import fares, okay, as domestic production rises. The second case, we consider a consumption tax implemented by a small country, which initially is just importing the commodity from the rest of the world. So the consumption tax inhibits domestic consumption by raising the consumer's price, but has no effect on the world price. The domestic producer's price, import for as a domestic consumption, okay, fails. The second point is production subsidy effects in a small importing country. Okay, domestic policies can affect trade in an industry for a commodity that is either an export or an import. Okay, competitor initially. We consider the price, production, welfare effects. Okay, so production subsidy when the subsidized this product is just initially imported into the country. So let's see the welfare effects in small importing countries. Okay. So at this time, okay, in the adjoining diagram or in the side diagram, okay, the free trade price is just given by PFT, okay, here. So this is free trade, price of the consumer. The upper one is price of the producer, okay. So then at free trade, okay, the straight line is the demand at D1, okay. So the supply is just at S1, all right. So determines an important free trade. The distance between D1 and S1, when we subtract one from the other, which we are just looking at this, the red line, okay. So when the production subsidy S is just imposed, domestic producer prices rises by the subsidy value to just PP, okay. So producer's price. Because free trade is just maintained and the importing country is just small, the domestic consumer price remains, okay, at PFT. So thus the effect of the subsidy in this case is to raise domestic supply, okay, from S1 to S2, okay, while domestic demand is just D1. As a result, okay, the subtraction between demand and supply, okay, demand D1, DS2, okay, we can find that, okay, the red label, all right.
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ MBA በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ MBA በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ MBA በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ MBA በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ MSc በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።
So the effect is this, okay? Then the effect is, okay, when we see, look, the red colors are just, it's a loss, then the black label is a gain, okay? So consumer surplus is zero, okay, because a producer surplus is there, they are just gaining, okay? And the government revenue is just lost, okay? National welfare is also lost, okay? So because of production of subsidy, okay, these are the effects, okay? Government can lose a revenue as well as national welfare is also suffering. In small countries, okay, in the rest of the world, the small country assumption implies that the domestic policy, okay, the production subsidy would have no noticeable effect, okay, for, okay, small importing countries, okay. Foreign prices would remain unchanged, and also their export to this country would fall. These changes in trade volume, okay, would have no noticeable impact in the rest of the world. Thus, the welfare effects are insignificant in the rest of the world buying, okay, are assumed to be zero. So the third point is domestic consumption taxes, okay. What does this domestic consumption tax is? So what is its contribution? Okay, so this domestic consumption taxes, sometimes it is called value-added taxes, okay, in our country cases, is a tax collected by the government on sales of a particular product. The tax can be ad valorem or specific tax, okay. So the domestic consumption tax is different from the import tariff or export taxes, okay. So the consumption tax is just levied on all of the goods sold in domestic market, regardless of, okay, where the goods are just produced, whether it is, okay, imported or just produced within the country, okay, whatever the case, the consumption tax will be levied. Domestic consumption taxes are generally used as a source of government revenue, usually. Then we will analyze that. The international trade effect of domestic consumption tax using a partial equilibrium analysis, we will assume that the market in question, okay, perfectly competitive and the country is small. We will also ignore any benefits, policy may argue, such as, okay, creating a more pleasure distribution in income or generating valuable external effects. Instead, we'll focus initially on the producer, consumer, and government revenue effects of, okay, each policy. So let's consider effects of consumption tax under two different scenarios, okay. The first case, the tax is implemented in the country that is not trading with the rest of the world. The case is just used, okay, to show how a domestic policy can international trade. The second case is just price and welfare effects of the consumption tax implemented by the country that is initially importing the good from the rest of the world. So a consumption tax can cause trade of small, perfectly competitive open economy, even if countries were just identical with the rest of their resource endowments. A consumption tax could induce trade between the countries, as we have just seen previously under subsidy. Consider a small open economy with a perfectly competitive industry. Let the domestic market be represented by supply and demand. So in the next slide, diagram or graph, suppose initially that free trade is just allowed with the rest of the world, but by coincidence or actually by assumption, let the free trade prices be actually equal to the outer key price of the good, okay, the local demand and supply. Look at here, next, suppose that the government of a country imposes, okay, specific per unit consumption tax. That is T. This means that the government collects T, okay, at T level, dollars, okay, for just every unit of goods sold in domestic market, regardless of whether the product is just produced domestically or is just imposed. Then the tax will raise the domestic consumer prices of a good by just a full amount of the tax at PC. Okay, the price of consumer will raise. So reduces domestic demand to Q2 here. Okay, so then the red line, okay, is just the domestic producers will not be just affected by consumption tax, since continued competition in free trade with firm in the rest of the world will just maintain the profit maximization prices, that is P at FT. This means that producer price will remain equal in free trade usually. So by its nature, this consumption tax is just transferable. So the producers are just transferred to what? The consumers, okay? Since the tax has no effect upon the producer price, then it rises the consumers' prices. Domestic demand fails due to this, to Q2, okay? While domestic supply, okay, remains equal. The difference is that the red line, okay, what we have seen previously on the graph, okay? This, it is just reducing the quantity of demand, okay, from Q1 to Q2 back. So to conclude that, this implies that the consumption tax will induce exports of goods. Thus, this is an example in which a domestic policy, a consumption tax, can cause trade to occur, okay? Exports can just be started. So the fifth point is, okay, the consumption tax effect on small importing countries, okay? So how does it affect us, okay? Domestic policies can affect trade in an industry for a country that either an exporter or an importer competitor initially. In this example, we consider the price, production, welfare effects of the consumption tax when the taxed community is initially imported in the country, okay, like our cases. So the free trade price is just given domestically at S1, okay, PFT or P producer's price. So at this time, the supply one is here, okay, and the domestic demand is at D1, okay, here. So the difference is just the red line, okay, D minus S1, D1 minus S1, all right. When the specific assumption tax T is imposed, the consumer price will rise by the amount of PC, okay, price of consumers, okay. So the higher the price paid by the consumer will reduce the demand D usually to D2, all right. So the demand to D2 decreases, okay. The producer's price will remain at the same time. So then price of producer is equal to price of, okay, free trade, and hence domestic supply will remain at S1. So the tax will reduce imports from, okay, outside, from external countries. So what does the welfare effect looks like at this time, at this scenario? The welfare effect is that, okay, of the consumption tax are shown in the table. Look at the table and the graph, just compare side by side. When we are just comparing side by side, okay, so the red letters are just a loser, okay, the losses, okay. So consumer surplus is just shows loss. Then the producer surplus, there is no at all, okay, there is no producer surplus at all, because the producer surplus, as you have seen last week, okay, it's as a side, it is below the free trade, so not existing. So the government revenue is just collected, okay. So the government is just benefited. So the national welfare is just suffering, Okay, loss is just shown here. Okay, there is loss here. All right. So it affects consumer surplus as well as national welfare. Okay, so who is just going to benefit it is the government from this consumption tax naturally in the world. So consumers suffer a loss in surplus, because the price they pay rises by the amount of the consumption tax. So producers experiences no change in surplus since the producer's price, that is, the price received by producer remains at a free trade level. Note that. Even though import falls, this decrease has no positive effects on producers in this situation. Finally, the government receives tax revenue from the competition tax. The revenue is just calculated as T, PC minus PP, times the quantity changed to D2. Since the cost of consumption exceeds the benefits occur, to the government, the net national welfare of the consumption tax is just negative, that is affected. It just indicates or shows negative. Although some segments of the population benefit, this remains a consumption efficiency loss given by area C. In the rest of the world, a small country as an assumption implies that the domestic policy or the consumption tax would have no noticeable effect. Foreign prices would remain unchanged, so domestic imports would fall. This change in trade volume would have no noticeable impact in the rest of the world. Thus, the welfare effect are just considered to be zero in this case for small countries or small contribution in the rest of the world. Generally, small countries are just not affected by this subsidy, consumption taxes, whatever and whatever. So even if they impose also, they cannot affect no noticeable impact in the rest of the world. They are just doing. So the final point is equivalence of an import tariff with domestic consumption tax plus producers subsidy. And let us see the balance, what we have seen till now. Let's begin by demonstrating the effect of consumption tax and production subsidy applied simultaneously by small importing countries. Let's apply and see at the same time. Then we will show why the net effects are just identical to the import tariff applied in the same setting and at the same rate. So let's consider the domestic production subsidy here by just subsidy of consumption tax, small importing country, by just looking the graph. Now we depict the initial equilibrium in the adjoining graph or diagram or the graph. The free trade price is just given at PFT. This is a free trade, at PFT. The domestic supply S1, from this free trade is here, all right, at S1. Then D1, the demand at these points, all right, the quantity demanded. So the difference between D1 and S1, the red level here, then when a specific consumption tax, the consumer price increases by the amount of PC, this point, because free trade is just maintained, the producer's prices would remain at PFT, but the increase in the consumer's price reduces to domestic demand to D2. At this time, the demand declines, because of the rise in price. Sorry. When a specific production subsidy S, is just given, all right. So it's just implemented a producer price. What we have seen is just a tax, okay? Then we rise the amount to PP, okay? Previously, PP was here at free trade. Now the producer price is just increasing, okay, to the consumption prices. But will not affect the consumption price as long as the production subsidy and the consumption tax are set at the same value. That is, okay, tax is equal to subsidy, okay? The imposed tax and the given subsidy is just equal, which we will, okay, assume the new producer's prices will equal to the new consumer's prices. That is, PC is equal to PP, this point, okay? So it becomes equal now. The effect of the production subsidy and the consumption tax together is to lower imports. That is D1 minus S1, the red line, or D2 minus S2. Okay, so to here, okay, D1, S1, or the red line, generally the red line to this level, all right, by just subtracting, okay, D2, S2, or D1, S1. So let's see the effect, okay, the welfare effects, okay, to the point, okay, the static welfare effect on production of subsidy, okay. So what does the effect looks like, okay? Combined welfare effects of the production, okay. Subsidy and consumption tax are both subsidy as well as consumption are shown in the table below. The latter refers to the area in the previous graph, as just red letters indicate losses, while black letters are just indicating gains, okay? Here it is on the table, okay? Consumers suffer a loss. Look, consumer surplus, they are just suffering a loss, okay? As the red labels, okay? Here it is, A, B, C, D, here, the area, this area. This indicates that a loss for, okay, consumers. The other one is a loss in surplus because the price they pay rises by the amount of the consumption tax. Producers gain in terms of producer surplus, okay? Producers are just, okay, gaining, okay? So the production subsidy raises the price producers receive by the amount of subsidy. And on the other hand, tax revenue, okay? The revenue by the government is just, they are just collecting and gaining, okay? So subsidy costs, they are just suffering, okay, a loss. Government revenue is just increasing. National welfare is just declining, okay? They are just, it indicates that a loss, okay? So the government receives tax revenue from the consumption tax, but must pay out money for the production subsidy. However, since the subsidy and tax revenue are just assumed identical, and since consumption exceeds production, okay, the revenue inflow exceeds the outflow. Thus, the net effect in a gain in revenue for the government. In the end, okay, the cost to consumers exceeds the sum of the benefits according to the producers and the government. Thus, the net national welfare affects the two policies, just that is negative. Notice that these effects are just indicated to the effect of tariff applied by a small importing country if the tariff set as a same trade, okay, as a production subsidy or the consumption taxes. If a specific tariff of the same side as a subsidy and tax welfare applied, the domestic prices would be, okay, PP or producer's price is equal to free trade, okay, of price at free trade plus tax, okay. So domestic producers are not change in tariff, would experience an increase in price to PP. The consumer price would also rise to PP. This means that the producers and the consumers' welfare effect would be identical to the case of the production subsidy or consumption tax. The government would only affect a tax on the imported commodities, which implies tariff revenue given by C, or consumption. This is exactly equal to the net revenue collected by the government from the production subsidy and consumption tax combined. The net national welfare loss to the economy in both cases are just represented by the sum of the production efficiency, okay, at B, okay, in the graph, and consumption efficiency at T in the graph. All right, this is what I have for today. So then Gitaun can share you the PowerPoint. Next time, I will have another additional assignment I'll bring for you. It must be 3, as I'm just informed from the department. So I'll bring another additional assignment. So please do accordingly. Start as early as possible because we will have a short period. So that's what I have for today. Anything you are just you can say?
Hello, yeah, doctor, you are hearing me? Yes. Yes. We didn't get the chapter 3 and 4, and also I think Getaun sent, but it have no attachment and open. Also, we didn't get the assignment.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so actually he told me that he attached to the email. So so please try to just open it again. I'll tell him he can send you again, including today's PowerPoint, okay. I think. I'll tell him.
Okay.
Yeah, to assignments, just do it as early as possible. I will add, as I'm just informed from the department, so the continuous assessment must be going on, so your assignment must be 3. So I'll add one more. So just to start as early as possible. So it's not that much hard. It's a reflection. You have to read it, and what you have to read accordingly, as the guideline says. I have attached the guideline. As per the guideline, just do it and attach it as early as possible to my email, so that regarding the exam, I will discuss with the department how it is going on. So it will be out of 30%. These assignments, all 3 assignments will be covered around 60 or 50% or whatever. We'll see it. Anyways, this is it. See you next time. It could be Monday. Goodbye.
ልዩነት መፍጠር ዓላማችን ነው። ዓለም አቀፍ ተወዳዳሪ መሆን አለባችሁ። የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ጥራትና ደረጃውን የጠበቀ ስልጠና በመስጠት ብቁ ዜጋ እያፈራን ነው። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ፣ በቲኬቲንግና ሪዘርቬሽን፣ በሆቴልና ቱሪዝም ሙያዎች አሰልጥነን ተወዳዳሪ እናደርጎታለን። ኮሌጃችን ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ICM ጋር በመተባበር ዓለም አቀፍ ዕውቅና ያለው ስልጠና እየሰጠ ይገኛል። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን በበረራ መስተንግዶ የምንሰጣቸው ስልጠና ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ ዕውቅና አለው። አድራሻ ከጎላጉል ታወር 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።